Hey, ESL 106, we are here to talk about Skill 8. We're in Unit 3 here in your book. Hopefully, you have your book with you. We're going to take a look at Skill 8 language chunks. And I want to look at some of the exercises that they give you just to get a little practice before you do the assignment that I have for you here in Module 8, looking at Skill 8. So let's take a look. I'm on page 176 in your book, and I'll bring up a few examples here as we look at this slide. So when we're talking about language chunks, what are we talking about? And I want you to think about language chunks just as phrases, commonly used phrases that are used with certain words that always seem to come together. For example, we might say, oh, that's a big deal. And that's a language chunk. We say those three words, a big deal, as one phrase to mean one thing, right? Like that's important. That's a big deal. On the other hand, if I say that's a big room, I'm not using that as a language chunk. I'm not putting those three words together to mean one thing. Right? I'm using those three words as an adjective and a noun to describe something. It's a little different. So we're looking together to see what are some language chunks that are common in English. And I'm sure you already know a lot of these. So your book gets us started with some business language chunks. And this is on page 176. They give you these paragraphs and they put in bold language chunks like operating expenses or best practices. And those are phrases that are used to refer to one thing, right? The operating expenses, what it costs to run a business, or the best practices, the current models or the current wisdom in how to best run a business. A few more that they give you are under pressure or stay ahead of the curve, on the cutting edge, in the end. So all of these really give you just phrases that come together to mean one thing. And these words are used in these phrases in this way. You will learn the chunk and all of these words will come together in this order. Let me just show you a few other examples of language chunks, and maybe it will clarify. Here are some language chunks that we use in education, especially in language education. And again, I took these from your book. These came from page 182, which is an article about global English. So take a look at this paragraph and tell me, do you see language chunks? Or what would you say is a language chunk here? A few of the chunks that I underlined, and maybe this will be familiar: non-native speakers, native speakers, global English, world English. These are phrases that we use really to refer to just one thing. We use these words as though they were one word, native speakers. Some of you are interested in healthcare. So I was looking for some language chunks or some phrases that are used commonly in healthcare. And here are a few that I found. You might call these even idioms or just phrases that are common. Alive and well, right, to mean being healthy. Or back on one's feet. These are phrases that nurses might use to talk about a patient who's doing very well. My mother is back on her feet after being sick for 2 days. If a patient is not doing well, you might hear these phrases: he's as pale as a ghost, or he was at death's door, meaning not doing well, right? Very sick, seriously ill. So we're going to look at these types of expressions, language chunks, and your book actually gives you a whole list. So take a look at page 177, and they organize this list according to parts of speech. They say here are some that have adjective plus noun, something like the bottom line or the cutting edge. Here are some with two nouns, a business plan or a call center. And then there's a whole list that they call binomials. And binomial just means two words or two names. And usually they're connected with the word and. Brick and mortar, black and white. Expressions that we always use in that order. They have noun phrases, verb phrases, prepositional phrases. Take a look. You have a long list, and these are the language chunks we're going to practice with. Your book says here are your strategies. Now I'm on page 178. As you're reading, look for some of these patterns. Look for the ways that these words occur over and over again in the same order and with the same other words. And take note on these things. You might want to note these things on your vocabulary chart. If you're looking at nouns, try to see what are the adjectives that get used a lot with those nouns, right? If the noun is range, we often say, oh, there's a wide range of choices or a very narrow range of choices. Those are the adjectives we usually use. If you're looking at verbs, then think about, oh, what are some of the verbs that are used? Maybe you have a verb. Sorry, actually, this occurs with nouns as well. Maybe you see these words with be or do, with make or take, right? Like to make an impression or to take a risk. So now I'm looking at a noun and I'm seeing what verbs are used with that noun. Maybe it's make, maybe it's do. And as you're looking at language chunks, you can look them up in the dictionary, and sometimes dictionaries will help you out with the phrase. Sometimes they will have these idioms or these expressions as whole phrases. So here, guys, what I want us to do just quickly is to do a little practice on page 178. Take a look at the paragraph they have for you. I want you to tell me what's the topic, what's the main idea, and then try to find 5 language chunks. All of them on this paragraph in skill 1, they're all nouns, nouns. So if you could pause here, I'm going to keep moving, but it's a good idea for you to pause and to find these before you go on to the next slide. So we're looking at this paragraph, and I see that really the topic is all about outsourcing business to different countries. And they end up talking a lot about communication. I saw that word communication come up. Language, communication, language issues. And I underlined the main idea really coming here in that second sentence that starts with when various important divisions of a company are spread all over the globe, problems with communication can rise. And I see that's the main idea of this paragraph, is looking at communication problems, right? I also underlined this sentence towards the end. It's the last sentence. It starts with although outsourcing has many advantages, there are indeed situations in which language issues among employees can lead to problems. So I just wanted to make sure you understood the paragraph. It's about language and communication when you're using outsourcing across different countries. But where are the language chunks? 5 phrases. So I circled these phrases as noun language chunks, and you're going to find these as you read this paragraph. Language barriers, business operations, customer service, parent company, sports fan. Those are good examples of language chunks in that paragraph. But here, let's do it again, guys. Look at the next page. And there's another example for you, skill practice 2. What is this paragraph about? What would you say the main idea is here? So hopefully you can see this is really talking about taking a business online, taking your brick and mortar business, your physical business, and pushing it online in order to make more sales. I underlined this part of it. It comes in the third sentence. It says an online store allows a company to buy and sell anywhere in the world. And it's really capturing that, the advantages of going online. But now you have to circle 11 different language chunks. You might want to pause here as you circle them, and I'm going to share them with you in the next slide. So I was looking for adjective noun language chunks, and I found these. They talked about a wide range, a dominant role. I was looking for noun language chunks. I found these, consumer products, business operations. Again, looking for noun phrases, I saw this one, the comfort of home. And verb phrases, I saw make a profit or take their time. Those were good phrases starting with verbs. And then finally, I saw a few more, let's see, as I was looking for binomials. I saw brick and mortar, I saw buy and sell, and then supply and demand, also in that paragraph. The prepositional phrase that I circled was on the rise. Did we already say that? Maybe we did. So lots of language chunks in that paragraph. Guys, your last exercise here using language chunks is actually to fill in this last skill practice paragraph and use the language chunks in the white box. So take a look at this paragraph just quickly. What's it about? What do you think they're talking about here? And how are you going to use these language chunks to finish the paragraph? So as you look at this paragraph, I want you to see they're talking about getting started in the business world. They say breaking into the business world. And really the main idea as you read into this paragraph, it's all about the first step in the job search process, which is the interview. So this paragraph really focuses on the interview. You might want to pause here, see if you can complete the paragraph, and then I'll show you what I did. So I'm just going to run through this and see if you agree with me. For A, I used making a fortune. For B, spend the night. And C, tossing and turning. D, at your best. E, take a breath. And F, draw attention. G, don't waste time. And H, a business plan. I, cash flow. J, sooner or later. And that's going to end the paragraph for you. Guys, I'm almost out of time. I just want to emphasize you are going to be reading an article, Disruptive Innovation, looking for language chunks. I hope you'll enjoy this article. It's really interesting, and we'll talk more about that in my next video. Your next steps are to look for language chunks as you listen to this TED Talk that you'll find in Skill 8 assignment.